Hey guys, we are back. The 2022 real estate market forecast continues. We have Mark Dowling back for, I guess, the fourth, fifth year. We're not exactly sure, but it's been a few. So last year we brought Mark in studio because we wanted to sit down and chat with him a little more in depth as opposed to a panel, which is what we've done previously. And anyway, we must have done a good job, or at least I think we did a good job, so we're back.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's always fun.
Mark is the CEO of the Inland Valleys Association of Realtors, affectionately known as IVAR. It's been 12 years, which again, we were just talking, it's kind of hard to believe it's been 12, but here we are, both with, mature beards and a few more gray hairs. So anyway, welcome back. How
Thank
are
you. I'm doing well. It's always a great opportunity to be here.
Good.
And share whatever insight I have in the market and help people understand what's going on.
Did I miss anything on the introduction? Have you got any new titles or anything special going on?
No, it's pretty much the same.
Same stuff?
Yeah.
All right, so you're basically, running the show in the Inland Empire.
Well, for IVAR, there's other associations, but for IVAR, yes. I've been there 12 years.
No other associations. Those EVAR people, I'm a member. Maybe those, anyway. So anyway, our primary membership was with IVAR. Full disclosure, I've been on the IVAR board of realtors on and off for a long, long time. Not currently on the board, but anyway, I have a soft spot for Inland Valleys. So
thank you.
Anyhow, so we're going to look back real quick. Okay, so here we are. Let's date St. Patrick's Day. Why did we do this? Why are we doing this on St. Patrick's Day? Because I asked and you came.
And I'm wearing green, so.
And I am not. So anyway, we'll deal with that later. All right, so March 17th, 2022, this video will be posted within the next few days. But looking back at 2020, we did this last year. And basically, I'll recap, and I just want to get your opinion on a bunch of things. So in 2020, COVID year one, 20% appreciation in real estate values. Nobody predicted that. I mean,
they did not.
Right, I don't think you did.
No, in fact, you asked me to participate in this type of a discussion in 20, and I said I will take a pass because I have no idea what's going to happen.
Okay, and to my knowledge, and that's what our forecast is about. Let's kind of stick our necks out a little bit. Nobody that we interviewed in March of 2020, rightfully so, other than Chris Thornburg was definitely, hey, it's going to be a V recovery. Everybody just relax. And some people might argue it was a true V, and Chris, he'll be sitting here in a couple of weeks, and he absolutely will defend the V to the death. But he certainly didn't predict a 20% appreciation of values.
Right.
Okay, so we get to the end of 2020, and it's like, okay, well, hey, now it's January 2021. We're still kind of COVIDing, and we did it again. And again, nobody predicted another 20% on top of the prior 20%. And now here we are in first quarter of 2022. I'm hearing things. I'm hearing, double-digit appreciation. And people I respect are saying it's going to be. I'm hearing people I respect that are saying it's not just this year, next year, and in the context of Russia, and Ukraine, and inflation. So you want to take a stab on what's going on?
Well, if you believe that the economy is stable, and for the most part, all the indicators are that it is. Now, there are changes, COVID's accelerated changes in the economy, and we've seen the retail industry and service industries change significantly, and the question is, what are they going to look like? But if you look at the other jobs that are typically higher paying jobs in California and obviously the region here, most of the jobs have come back. Yep. They were not eliminated. So if Chris Thornburg wants to say it's a V, it largely is for most sectors, particularly higher paying sectors. So the question is, it all comes down to consumers, supply and demand.
Okay.
People always want a roof over their head. It's kind of essential. Food, water, shelter, okay? And whether you're renting or whether you're buying, you have to figure something out. And right now, as we know, rents are going up, interest rates are still down, and if you can buy a house, you are going to try to buy a house. So the demand's there, it's just an issue of inventory, and that's where we're lacking.
Right, we're going to get to that. Just I want to preempt any phone calls from Chris Thornburg. Chris is going to see this before he comes in, and he is absolutely going to throw a chart up here that says, it's a V. And again, Manford Kyle with Claremont McKenna might say, well, it's a little different of a V, but to your point, jobs basically are back. The consumer need, of course, for the basic, housing is always there. Interest rates have been, it's about as attractive as we ever would want them. There's obviously some upward pressure. Maybe we'll touch base on that in a minute. And then, of course, inventory, which, of course, we'll touch base on that. And you also mentioned rent. So you hit all the hot buttons, all of the things that I want to talk to you about in the next, however many minutes we're going to go here. So, but you did. I don't think you answered my question, though. So, okay, let me help you out if you need it. California Association of Realtors is the last forecast I saw, which I think was maybe a month old. And Jordan, what's Jordan's last name?
Is it Levine?
Levine. Jordan came in and said 5% appreciation numbers statewide. And granted, Inland Empire is not California, but anyway, 5% statewide appreciation, but a 5% fewer unit sales. So using that as a baseline, does that? By the way, I looked at that and I said, okay,
right,
that seems reasonable. And does that seem reasonable to you?
On the unit sales side, yes. I mean, and if you look at the data going back the last 8 or 10 years, we've typically sold in the Inland Empire about 42 to 46,000 units a year. It fluctuates slightly, but it's really been in that same category for 10 years. It hasn't changed much. Right. So I suspect we're going to roll into the same thing. We're not dealing with anything on the economic side that's going to cause people to pause from a buying standpoint. The interest rates, if they start to tick up, sure, it's going to weed out some people that may not be able to qualify now. However, that's just going to create more interest because people are saying, I better buy now before interest rates really begin to creep up and then I get priced out of the market. So, but then on the issue of the appreciation, I think down 5% is not what we're going to see in the Inland Empire. I suspect will be 7 to 10%. Up.
Right.
Year over year.
Just for clarity, Jordan, I'm going to make sure, because I must have heard you or maybe you misspoke. CAR's forecast for prices is up 5%.
Oh, up 5%. Okay, I think we're going to be higher.
Down 5% on unit sales.
Okay.
Prices up 5%. So you're thinking...
A little higher than that.
But not double digits, not 10.
It could be.
Okay.
It could
of course.
be.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, yeah.
I don't think
or it could be 20.
I don't think it's going to be 20.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's 10 or 12.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be much lower, maybe 7 to 8, but I don't think it's going to be 20. We're getting into a range there that's going to make it much more difficult for people to qualify, particularly if interest rates tick up.
Right. Okay. And I'm not looking for a fight because I think generally, I think we're more or less agree on what's going on here.
I'll readily admit I'm guessing.
Interest rates, again, they checked with me tomorrow, but I think right now, 4.5-ish, which is a 1.5 more than they were even 30, 45 days ago. Feds came out yesterday, 0.25% basis point raise, and I didn't get it exactly right. If you know, jump in. Kind of assuring additional rates throughout the year. I thought I heard like 6 Fed funds rates.
I'd heard that as well. I don't know the specifics though.
Which would take us to, I don't know, say a 2% discount, or Fed funds rate rather, which still puts us at interest rates below 5, I guess. I don't know. But that being said, so instead of 50 offers on the brand new listing, so we weed out a certain percentage, but we still have a significant number of buyer demand landing on a limited number of houses.
Right.
Hence, price values.
Correct.
Up.
Yeah, right? I mean, if you look at the numbers as far as the units that have been built in California versus the population of California, we have roughly 40 million people in California.
Yep.
We sold in 1986 with 27 million people, we sold about 400,000 homes a year. In 1986 with 27 million people. Right. It's 2021, we sold 400,000 units, the same number with 40 million people.
Right. Population went up by a huge number of units sold.
And if you look at the permits that have been issued for both multifamily and single-family construction, it pales in comparison to what we saw through the 80s, 90s, and even the early to mid-2000s.
Right.
Even though the economy in California has been reasonably strong, I mean, we've outpaced, from an economic job growth standpoint, the nation for the last decade, and the Inland Empire has outpaced California. We still don't see the home construction.
Right. So building permits are up. You can look at a chart and says, yeah, they're up. But when you compare it to the period of time you're talking about, it's ridiculous.
Nominal.
It's nothing.
Right. And there's that gap every year. We've fallen behind the last 10 to 15 years for the unbuilt properties, yet the population continues to grow.
Yeah, which is what, Joel Singer recently retired. I mean, for as long as I've been going to the CAR meetings, and you've been going for a long time as well, he would do his forecast and he would basically, hey, we're just not building enough houses. And he's been saying that for as long as I can remember. And man, it was always true. And I always would scratch my head and say, geez, how come we need to build more houses? And we understand CEQA and permitting process and just the environment to build single families and sprawl is just not what California legislature and population apparently wants to do, because that's what we've been doing. But when he would say it before, I acknowledged it to be true, but it never felt painful. Now it feels painful. It's like, wow, okay, this is like really a problem. We are not building enough homes. And well, I guess we'll get to the ADU thing in a minute, because you shared something with me before our interview. But it seems like the solution to an inventory or housing supply problem in California is not making it easier for new construction to be built. It's let's do lot splits and let's let everybody put a second unit on their house.
That, in addition to the idea that the cities want to build they want bigger homes on bigger lots to attract wealthier people.
Right.
The idea of building a community within a city that has a balance of housing for entry-level workforce housing, the smaller starter homes that we saw that were built after World War II, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 1.5s, that were 1,200 square feet. Those dominated the market in the 1950s, because the idea was we want to get people to start the process of owning a house. And then, of course, what happened? After 5 to 7 years, they built some equity, they move up to the bigger house.
Right.
That's not the case anymore.
Right.
I mean, the old adage was people will buy and then flip that house and sell it in what, 7 to 8 years. People in California stay in their house on average 19 years.
Right, right.
We do not have the transaction that we used to have.
Right.
And people stay in home.
Yeah. And well, totally sidebar, different what you're saying. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but then millennials who finally started to buy, they're not willing to buy what you and I moved into in the very beginning. That super duper entry level in a neighborhood that I really don't want to live in necessarily. I mean, at least the millennials I know, I mean, geez, that's a pretty damn nice house for a first house. But then again, they're also making a lot more money for their first house and have better jobs, frankly, than I had when I was a kid.
Right.
But anyway, just nuts. Okay, so you had mentioned you recently interviewed, who did you interview at D.R. Horton? One of the top dogs?
It was about a year and a half ago. It was a senior
one.
VP, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well then let's tie this together though.
Yeah.
So I did not interview Randall Lewis, but I was in a session a couple of weeks ago
Yes.
with Chris Thornburg, Randall Lewis, and a couple of other folks in the industry. And we were talking about this conversation. And Lewis Homes, they're building homes.
They are.
So my question with Randall was, well, goodness, had you known, if you're people you trust, that said, hey, because it's such a long process, there's so much risk, right? We build all these units, we put all this money in, and then what's the economy going to look like a year or two from now? And then to do that in a COVID era, boy, that really took some courage, right? To go sit back in March of 2020 and plan a project that you knew was going to come, wasn't going to come to fruition until the summer of 2021 or 2022. So they were conservative. But my question was if you knew that this was going to happen, would you have built? And he had an interesting, some of the family members at Lewis would have said absolutely, and others would have said, well, no, let's make this over a period of time. But they're building. D.R. Horton's building.
Yes.
KB's building. I interviewed Ido Benzivi in your chair, a few days ago. That interview is going to be posting shortly. He's building finally in Moreno Valley. Okay, he's got that little section of property on the east end of Moreno Valley down by his project. I didn't even realize he had this many buildable lots or units, but 5 to 10,000, and he wants to go vertical at the end of this year, early next year. I've been asking him that question for 10 years.
Oh, there you go.
Later. Well, later is apparently now, so which is good. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, that excites me, especially as someone who has an office in Moreno Valley. But it just still doesn't seem like enough. It just seems, let's segue into the inventory problems. And I know we're not new home guys, we're resale guys. So I guess you said it. People are staying in their home longer, 19 years. Is there a solution to the inventory shortage that we have right now? Because it just seems to be getting tighter and tighter.
Well, we can't immediately build ourselves out of the situation that we're in right now. We literally have taken decades to put ourselves in the current position. There is no magic wand or switch we can flip where all of a sudden there are permitted lots.
Years.
Where there is, supply chain issues that are still out there, and cost issues and labor issues are difficult. The D.R. Horton person I spoke to, he said they're at capacity now, mainly constrained from a labor standpoint.
Right.
He said we cannot build fast enough because we do not have the labor to supply us.
Right.
So
Crazy.
there are a variety of constraints that are literally slowing the process.
So where are they going to where do you get that labor? I mean, I know that's not our business, but I mean, if you're in the construction business and you're having trouble with construction, I'm trying to build a deck on the back of my house. I talked to my guy yesterday, A year ago, I talked to him. I wish I would have taken him up on his offer a year ago. I didn't. I called him. He says, dude, you think it was bad last year.
Yeah.
I can't even get Simpson hangers, basically the hangers to put the patio together. I can't even get the hangers to build it. I said, well, what are you talking about? 3, 4, 6. I said, I have no idea. I can't even give you a number. This is to build a simple little wood deck off the back of a house.
Right.
Now, forget about, I need all sorts of other stuff to build a property. I don't know. It's just insane. Okay, so on the inventory, let's go residential, single family resale properties. So 2-3 years ago, broker owner, my biggest complaint was we don't have any inventory. Oh, there's no inventory. And then a year later, the inventory was less. Oh, there's no inventory. Here we are a year later, the inventory is less. And which, by the way, the market data that you put out at IVAR, is that open to the public, or do you have to be a member to get that?
It's open.
Okay.
Yes.
So IVAR, is that on the website?
It is, yes.
Okay. You guys put out some really good stuff. Is Van still doing that? Or?
He is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Inland Valley Association of Realtors every month puts out their market data report. You send it out to the members as, and I got to tell you, I for one, I look at that every single time because I compare
Good.
yours to the stuff that I pull. In theory, they should be identical because we're pulling it from the same source, I think. But it's really, really good. It is open to the public, so you don't have to be a member of the Inland Valley Association of Realtors. So go to IVAR's website, look for the market data thing.
Right.
And you generally do a little bit of commentary on it as well.
Correct.
A paragraph or two.
A little blurb, right.
Yeah, but I read it.
Okay.
And which is one of the reasons you're here, because you do have an opinion. So I just don't know. I don't see a solution for single family inventory on the resale other than it just is what it is. And I guess we should be happy that the demand is landing on the supply. But as a broker who, we make money in two ways. We sell houses and we sell them at a certain price. Well, the price is nice, but would it be nice to sell a few more? 5% more, 10% more? And at the end of the day, we're all happy because prices are up. It's making up for the fact that we're selling fewer houses.
Right.
But it's a problem when you're a realtor working on the buy side and you're writing offers on and competing against 18, 20 other agents.
No, it's painful.
And then on the consumer side, Art Carter was here and we relived his buying process from 2 years ago. He said the sell process was fantastic. The buying of that home was one of the, I'm being a little dramatic, but one of the worst experiences I've had. That's not good. Even if the consumers want real estate and we need real estate, I just don't, it just doesn't feel good.
Particularly for people that are, I'd say first-time buyers or kind of entry-level buyers. And I'm sure you've heard a number of your agents that are working with buyers.
Yep.
And at some point in time, the buyer just literally gets fatigued.
Right.
And they pull the
Buyer
plug.
fatigue, yeah.
Yeah, and they say, enough. I've been doing this now for 90 days. I can't get a single offer accepted. I'm just going to call timeout and we're going to wait this out and see what happens.
Right.
That's the problem.
Well, we talked about that last year. You're the first person that I've interviewed this year that used the term buyer fatigue. But we should have been saying it from the very beginning.
Well, the flip side of it is, think about this. I know there are people that have been in their homes for, let's say, a decade. They have hundreds of thousands in equity. They would sell that house, but they don't know where to go.
Yep.
And secondarily, they know they're not a great buyer because they're a contingency buyer.
Yep.
And that puts them at a disadvantage. So you're even seeing great people with equity that could sell and move up or move over or whatever,
right,
hold on to the house. And there's a certain gridlock right now in the market that they're stuck.
Yeah, and it's so painful.
Yeah,
I had an agent text me. It was either this morning or last night. She's got these buyers, 3 separate buyers, writing offers on 3 separate properties. All 3 of them, multiple offers. All 3 of them, she got the thank you for participating email and phone call, but not one of them got accepted. And she's writing good offers. I mean, these are good high down payments. She didn't tell me what, but I'm assuming she's at least writing it at full price, if not above, because that's what you got to do. Anyway, it's crazy. Okay, so I'm talking specifically to our consumers out there because I get these calls, emails, texts all the time, and I've been getting these for years, which is, okay, we're in the bubble. It's got it's unsustainable. 20% appreciation. When's it going to end? And I'm like, okay, well, it's different. No one's writing bad loans. People have good jobs. Contrary to what's in the news right now, the economy is pretty damn good. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, we could talk about inflation and what that's going to potentially mean and do. But whenever I think, okay, well, yeah, maybe we're too hot. Maybe we're going to see a pullback in values. it doesn't take me too long to sit back and then put on my property management hat, look at our rental inventory, which is just as thin as the purchase resale inventory. And I look at the rental appreciations, which even though we've got all sorts of controls on, price increases on rentals, rental prices are ridiculous.
Correct.
So my retort to that is, we can't see a reduction, not that we can't, but we shouldn't see a reduction in property values if for one of those factors that bolsters them is rentals. So I got to tell you, the same concern I have, oh my gosh, these prices on the real estate are just a little too hot. I mean, can we get by with a 10% appreciation and be happy? But it's the same thing on the rental. And again, I have the same concerns. I have tenants coming to me daily having the exact same experience that they're having, that the buyers are having, and they have no place to go.
Right.
So what's give us the solution to our rental problem, Mark? What are you going to do to solve this?
It kind of falls into the same category on the inventory on the sales side. It's an issue of supply. I mean, they're building, but not enough.
Right.
And they may be building more now, but they weren't building more 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 8 years ago. And it's been stockpiling. This problem has been stacking on itself year after year. Again, I wish it could be solved quickly. No, the occupancy rate in the Inland Empire on the rental side is about almost 98%.
It's 100%.
For all intent and purposes, correct. It is.
Yep.
And that is insane. I know you're going to have Aaron Norris. I think you're interviewing him
soon.
I
hope I'm going to get him in a couple weeks.
Aaron told a couple stories when we interviewed him at Ivar recently. One of which is he has a rental property in San Jacinto. He's had it for about 5 years. I think he used to rent it for $1,500.
Yep.
Tenants moved out. He said he immediately re-rented for $2,500.
Right.
And he said, I didn't do much to improve that property outside of paint and flooring.
Yep.
And he said, I probably could have rented it for more.
Yep.
He told a story about somebody he knows who inherited, I think it was a family member who passed away, inherited a condominium in Riverside. He's remodeling it now. One of the local tenants came by and said, are you going to sell it or rent it? They said, we're going to rent it.
Right.
The guy said, I'll rent it for $5,000 a month on a year lease.
Right.
$5,000.
Well, and you know what? Probably because he had been looking for weeks and weeks and weeks, couldn't find anything, knew it was above market, but said, if I can lock it up for $5,000, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I want to eliminate the stress associated with that whole process.
Right.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, and Aaron got lucky. And again, I don't want to blindside you here, but we've got those new, basically California rent control, which in effect says you have certain limitations on how much you can raise your rent on existing tenants, et cetera, et cetera. But Aaron got lucky in that his tenant moved out. Now his tenant's out, whereas if his tenant hadn't moved out, he would have had some rent caps that he could have increased it. Now he doesn't have that restriction. Goes from $1,500 to $2,500. I mean, man, which by the way, if you're one of my landlords, I talked to one of you today, like, Lance, my rent is here and it needs to be here. I'm like, oh, you have a little bit of a problem. The reason it's here is because you've had a tenant that's been in that property for 10 years.
Right.
And the rents have exploded so, Aaron's example. And we can't just go in and just do a 40% rent increase on a tenant that's been there.
Right.
The rules don't permit it. Anyway, just and forget, I'm not even talking about the COVID rules. I mean, we have all sorts of other challenges with that, and tenants paying and not paying. Okay, so we've kind of strategically slid into some housing, some rentals. I know you shared you're doing an ADU on your
I
place.
am.
A couple of weeks ago, we had the guys from Back Porch Homes in here. They're not doing what you're doing. They're still doing the kind of the pull it in on a trailer kind of a thing, more of the modular type stuff. It sounds like you went full blown brick and mortar, foundation, the whole shot. So,
I did, yes.
You want to share the process?
Sure. So I have an 88, almost 89-year-old mother that is no longer able to drive. So she and I sat down and decided to build an ADU at my house.
Perfect.
So
truly a granny flat.
Truly, it's better than a granny flat because it's got a full kitchen.
Yeah.
The old granny flats, you could not have a kitchen.
Yep.
Nonetheless, it's been actually a very good experience. I was impressed. Now we're building it in Riverside.
Yep.
And the permit fees with the city were, I think, about $700 total.
Okay.
The plans and everything were about another $5,000 to $7,000 in that range.
Reasonable.
And it's about 456 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 full bath. And today we just got signed off after 30 days of construction, our framing permit. So we're going to start putting in windows and rough plumbing and rough electrical going in next.
I'm interpreting the look on your face. You have a little smile. So the process so far has been pretty good. Relatively painless in this. By the way, this is the city of Riverside because I'm hearing some,
It
some
is,
horror
and
stories.
one of
in
the
other areas.
advantages on the ADU side is it's an administerial review. It does not have to go before a planning commission. And in fact, one of my neighbors called to find out if I had had permits pulled.
Of course they did.
And which is
Yes.
fine. I have no
Right.
problem with them doing it.
Right.
And it was revealed to her that yes, he does have permits for an accessory dwelling unit.
Was this the immediate neighbor?
It was an immediate neighbor.
Okay.
And we get along, no issues there.
Right.
But she was just checking it out, and that's
Right.
fine.
Well, that's a different conversation, which maybe if we have time, we'll segue into what if everybody on your block did what you're doing? Parking issues and, density issues. And I see concerns with that. Having said that, not everybody on your block's going to do that.
Right.
So mom's in there for now. So without, you don't have to tell us, but I'm assuming you've done the return on investment, assuming you were renting it out to not mom. Are you going to charge your mom?
No.
This guy. Okay, so assuming you were going to rent it out at some point in time, obviously it costs money to build these things, expenses.
Right.
But this pencils out quite nicely.
It does. In fact, my contractor who's working on it is telling me that he cannot believe the demand right now for ADUs.
Right.
Everybody he knows is trying to build these things.
Right.
And he asked me, he goes, why? Why are they so popular? And I said, because they make money.
Right.
Short-term, long-term, however you want to slice and dice it, whether you have a family member in there,
Yep.
whether you're looking at the general appreciation of your property,
Yep.
it pencils out.
Yeah, they make sense. They make money. Everything about it. Which in part, I was talking to Todd and Steven at Back Porch, and they're doing very well. And they're
Good.
super excited. They got a
Yeah.
new plant. They're not doing what you're doing. You're doing regular stick-built construction.
It is.
Which, by the way, is kind of the way to go, I think, if you're going to do it. But the demand is high. But I look at my landlords, and I'm like, and we've done informational stuff on this, and I've had almost zero that have basically said, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm like, wait a minute, you're already in the rental business.
Right.
Now, not every property works and fits and all the rest of that, but there's several that do. Are you kidding me? Let's put this in there. Let's put us. We're totally redoing our property management model because generally speaking, we would not have done that as a management company.
Right.
Nah, we don't want to deal with that.
Well, a friend of mine has a construction company, and they worked with a client in Riverside.
Yep.
They built an ADU, a detached ADU on the property. They also have a detached garage. They're going to build a half ADU on the garage. So and then they have the front house. This person always wanted to have a rental income property in retirement, but the prices were out of range for this person. So they went the ADU route. They're going to be moving in like 2 to 4 years to Arizona. They have family members there. They're going to have their house paid off. They're going to have the ADUs paid off, and they're going to have rental income in excess of $6,000 off
Right.
of all of that.
Right.
And the guy goes, "This is my retirement."
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If you're in my book of business as a landlord and your property, to me the only thing is, unless it's 100% going to be family. If you're never going to put anybody outside in your property, but if you have a property that has a kind of a natural ingress egress, or you
Right.
can make the ingress egress kind of somewhat separated, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
Absolute no-brainer. Anyway, so I'm imploring everybody to take a look at that, especially if you're on our property management site. So congratulations with that. You're the first person that I'll consider somewhat in my inner circle, I suppose, that's actually done this.
Yeah.
I've been telling Drake, I said, dude, what are you waiting for? He got the perfect property for it.
Now, I will say this on the construction to labor side, it's a challenge. Now, the general contractor I've been using him for 20 years, so I have a great relationship.
Yep.
But when he went out to talk to different subs to work on the house, they went, "How big is it?" "Well, it's 456 square feet." A lot of them said, "It's not worth my time."
Right.
So he's having to build it with a small crew that he knows very well and that are kind of working with him. But it's not an attractive build because the size of them are so small.
Right.
The roofer kind of laughed when he went out and saw it. He said, "You're kidding me. It's
Right.
it's 7 squares." He said, "I'm going to have to hit you with a surcharge because the job is so small."
Right. Well, it's kind of the D.R. Horton thing on a smaller scale.
Absolutely.
If those guys are having trouble getting qualified labor, geez, really? How many square feet? 500?
Yeah.
Yeah, rough. Okay, so iBuyers. How's that for a hard shift? So Zillow exited the market. Again, let me set up iBuyers for those of you that haven't watched some of the setups on these. iBuyers are companies like Zillow and Opendoor and Knock and a few others out there that are basically, for lack of a better description, at least I describe them as direct-to-consumer buyers and frankly direct-to-consumer sellers. Let's just, kind of cut us out,
Right.
So Zillow exited. I believe Zillow's stock price has dropped 60 to 70% since they exited, like in August. Opendoor is still out there doing their thing. I think Art Carter said Knock is going through some changes, and they're another one of those.
I saw that, yeah.
Seemed like negative necessary, maybe laying off some staff or
They did.
whatever. So, but this is the deal. If the market's going to, if we're conservatively saying a 5% appreciation or greater, it seems to me like the iBuyer model continues. Certainly, that's why I cannot understand Zillow. Whatever operational challenges they had, how do you screw up that model with a 20% appreciation? Which, by the way, assuming we don't like the model, which self-serving, real estate guy
Right.
would like to work with consumers and not be cut out of the picture. I would prefer that model do something different. But if they can't make that work, I don't know. I just find it interesting. I know you got to be careful because I think Zillow's members of the board, and I know Open Doors members of the board. I don't expect you to go in and do something or say something you're not supposed to. So let me ask you this: do you have an opinion on what the future of that's going to be? Are we going to see more of this type of stuff in our industry, or
I think the idea of evolving brokerages and that whole meeting consumer demand is not going to change. We're going to continually see, as technology is more integrated, as consumer demands change. I mean, just the ability to buy stuff online is such a different dynamic.
Right.
Where people now, they don't even think about it. They literally pull out their phone and they buy something.
Everything.
I bought 2 cars online.
Right.
I literally went online, I chose the car, I chose the features, I negotiated the price.
Right.
They dropped it off, I filled out the contracts, they FedExed them, I FedExed them back. 1 day later, they brought the car to my house on a flatbed pickup.
Yep.
They dropped it off, handed me the keys, and walked away.
Best
I drove
experience
away.
ever. Right.
I did that 20 years ago.
Oh.
I did that in 2001, so 21 years ago.
Okay.
So it's not as if the technology is new, it's just becoming more seamless,
Right.
and it's becoming more acclimated in our culture. I mean, Skype's been around for how long?
Long time.
Yeah, so all of a sudden COVID hits and now, Zoom is like nothing new,
Right.
but people use it now, and then they use it more comfortably.
Right.
And I think that's going to be the case too on the consumer side relative to iBuyers and different models that come out as a result of it.
Yeah. Last year, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned him, Alex Perillo held every position of high authority within Realogy and Coldwell Banker for years and years. And we talked about him at last year's forecast, and he was talking about basically a one-click experience for a consumer. As a matter of fact, I think you and I talked about the consumer experience. And if we're not, as an industry, real estate industry, if we're not delivering a positive experience for the consumer, then they're going to look for a more positive experience. And frankly, if that's a Zillow experience or an Open Door experience, we'd like to say, oh, come on, the transaction's complicated and you need us and all the rest of that. And I absolutely believe that. I 100% believe that. But I just wonder if a large enough percentage of our realtor family is providing that experience. I think that, unfortunately, the number of true professional killers providing top-notch experience to the consumer is not as large as I would like it to be. And I got to look internally on that. I mean, we run a brokerage with 4 offices and 200 plus agents, and I got to, don't throw stones, right?
Right.
Glass house. I've got a glass house, and I could see some of that coming back at me. But I worry about that. I worry about the consumer experience. I was talking to Ido Benzivi, and he was talking about the number of JCPenney retail stores that have closed.
Right.
Okay. He used Sears as an example. He said Sears had it. Sears had Amazon, and they had their catalog. All they had to do is digitize it and change the consumer experience. They didn't see it, and then now they're Sears.
Right.
And Amazon is Amazon. So I do worry about our industry. I really truly worry if we're able to make that pivot and that adjustment as an industry. There is going to be a segment of our industry that's going to thrive no matter what.
Correct.
And I like to think I'm part of that thriving. But I just wonder how many realtors do we have in California right now?
About 200. I think they're estimating the year end to be about 215,000.
Right. To go back to that number earlier, when we were selling 400,000 units, how many years ago was that?
1986.
Okay, I got my license in 87, started going to Sierra immediately thereafter. Numbers about 400,000. Back then, 30 years ago.
There was 115,000,
Yeah,
110,000.
So twice as many realtors selling basically the same number of units.
To 50% more
I don't
people.
know. I guess we can kind of extrapolate what that means. So, interesting stuff.
Yep.
So, I talked, and you said you didn't want to talk about it, so here I am. So if you don't like it, we'll cut this part out of the interview. Since we're talking industry stuff, Art Carter, we talked about the DOJ lawsuits. And I'm going to make sure I air Art's interview before Mark's. So if you're wondering what's going on here, if you didn't see Art Carter's interview, listen to Art Carter's interview. He spends a fair amount of time talking about what he thinks could be a significant reset in our industry. And if I read his body language and his facial expressions, he seemed like, hey man, this could be some serious stuff. So I asked you before, and we kind of said, maybe we're not going to talk about it, but now I'm here, and I want to put you on the spot. So do we need a reset? I know the DOJ thing is different. They're talking about disclosures and consumers and how commissions are dispersed, and is that transparent and all the rest of that. But are we okay? Is our industry fine just the way it is, Mark?
You know, it's always going to change. I mean, you know that. I mean, you told me the story back in 96, 97 when we literally went from having an MLS as a book to it being on a platform that's digital and available to consumers. And you told me that story. You said you thought within 5 years you were going to be out of business.
Yeah, I did.
And here we are now. And more people use realtors and transactions than they have in 40 years.
Right.
So there's going to be change, and it's going to be somewhat negotiated, somewhat mandated, either through the DOJ or Consumer Affairs, what have you. Now, Art, who I have a ton of respect for, has far more insight on some of those lawsuits and some of the subtleties because they have more of a direct impact on the MLS and how that'll impact our membership. Was he very specific? Because I know a lot of them.
No, he was very vague.
Okay.
Extremely vague, Art.
Then I'm going to be even more vague.
Right,
so
right.
I'm going to beat him at that. So, I mean, the biggest issue from what I can tell on a lot of this is just the issue of transparency.
Right.
And the way commissions are dispersed and the way commissions are disclosed. And one of the big issues was, and I'll commend Art and his leadership, they took away the ability to search within the MLS for listings that had higher commission rates available to them.
Right.
And that's a good thing, because we shouldn't be doing that. We're a fiduciary of our client, and we shouldn't let the commission drive us relative to finding them a property.
Correct. Well, you certainly can't exclude the property your client wants because you don't like the commission that's being paid on it.
But historically, that could have been done.
You think? Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's interesting.
So yes, I mean that's a good change. I mean,
it is.
I commend them for doing that.
Well, you know what, we touched base with this on Art, and again, I hate to blindside you on this, but I know, I mean, you've got into thought and you've thought this through. The reason I'm not worried about any of that stuff is because I was worried when, oh my gosh, the acronyms leads in what's the federal agency that can regulates us? The not the franchise. It doesn't matter. Came out and said, hey, when we're going to do the new closing disclosure and the closing estimate, and when those were coming out, we were disclosing the amount of commission that, in this case, the buyer's agent was going to receive. And it was on there. And that was new. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're telling the buyer 3 days or a week before close of escrow that this is how much money their real estate agent's going to make. And I thought, wow, transparent. You know, okay, I got it, and that was obvious. I'm assuming that was the whole, thing behind it. But my concern wasn't so much telling the buyer, hey, this is how much money I'm making on this transaction. It was when we were telling it to them, and I'm thinking, oh wow, what is that going to mean? Now you're going to have consumers that are going to sit back and say, oh my gosh, you're really making that much money on this transaction? Would you please help me put on a new roof, or would you please help me pay for whatever it happened to be? So, and I was genuinely concerned about that. I'm like, wow, this is going to be very interesting. What's this going to mean? Well, you know what it meant? Nothing.
Right.
It meant nothing. Consumers looked at it, or maybe they didn't look at it, but I'm assuming they looked at it, and they said, I see value in what you're doing. And I think on balance, they said, I see value in what you're doing. Yeah, this is what it costs to buy and sell a property, and this is what you're making, and I'm going to go about my business.
Now, the big change, though, is what if the buyer now is having to pay you directly as it relates to your commission?
How are they going to do that?
I don't know, but that's what's under discussion.
Well, I understand.
That's under review.
And we did talk about that with Art. And I understand that. And that does fundamentally change a lot of things. And the main thing it changes is most of the buyers that we're working with may be in different marketplace, a little bit more financially healed consumers. But most of our buyers in the Inland Empire are like, hey, how much do I need down? How much do I need for closing costs?
Right.
Ooh, I just have enough. Okay. And oh, by the way, now you need to pay on top of that. So I mean, that could be a big deal.
Sure.
That's the buyer broker argument that's been out. It's not like it's new.
Correct.
It's been out there forever. Anyway, it is interesting, and again, for those of you that are saying, hey, what's the market forecast? What are you talking? Well, our market forecast transitioned a few years ago into some industry stuff. So this isn't necessarily for everybody, but part of what I like to do is industry stuff. So this is definitely inside baseball. So if you're not a realtor, you might be wondering what we're talking about. If you are a realtor, you probably should pay attention. God forbid you go to a meeting or something like that. Figure that out. So okay, so let's close with the following. Any concerns on the economic standpoint? We've got Russia invading Ukraine, the Fed met, fund rates going up a little bit. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. Upward pressure on interest rates. Anything that has you kind of concerned for this year or a couple years out as far as our industry is concerned?
Not for this year. I mean, short of some sort of disaster in Europe via
Right.
war. No, I think the Fed, what they're doing makes a lot of sense in relationship to inflation. Rates are still low. I mean, if people want to complain about 4.5%, I mean, what was it when you started in the industry? 17%?
Well, no, but I missed that. But my mom and dad were in the business, and my grandma were in the business, and you hear the 17, the 19%.
Right.
But
it was double digits when you started.
Well, it was, but I got my license in '86, started selling in '87, January 1, 1987.
Yeah.
And my first broker, I'll never forget, I'm at a sales meeting, and he lost, and I don't know anything about anything, right? But rates were at 10%, okay? And he lost his mind because on a daily basis, right? Things are going up, kind of like we are doing right now. But at a sales meeting, he says, everybody, rates for the first time in however long it's been are below 10%.
Yeah.
You go out right now and you tell everybody in the world, because we're probably never going to see interest rates below 10% ever again. And that was second quarter of 1987. Now, I don't have it committed to memory. Maybe they ticked back up, but I think generally speaking now for the last 35 years, rates have slowly slid down to sub 2.
Yep.
But I think what you were saying a minute ago, let's just suppose they're at 4.5, which by the way is higher than what CAR for at least a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. That's higher than what they forecasted them to end 2022.
Right.
I think they're saying, 4 or something like that. So we're, I don't know what that means. I don't know if Jordan's going to reassess that, or even for that, mortgage bankers, same thing.
Right.
They're forecasting, I think, even 4.
Yeah.
But I'll let you answer instead of
So
pontificating.
I guess my short answer is, I'm old enough to remember a lot of these ups and downs and changes in the market. And one thing I think I've taken away from that as a seasoned person and a 24-year broker is people adjust and adapt.
Right.
I mean, there's the initial reaction, like that guy not panicking, but boasting that it's under 10, get out and do something.
Yep.
But the fact is, people adjust.
Right.
We thought COVID was going to, completely implode us all. It didn't. Interest rates go up. It doesn't wipe us out. They go down. There's always an action and a reaction. I don't think it's going to be horrible. I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to cause that big of a disruption. Changes, yes, but people adapt.
Right. Well, and if anything, again, I'm talking to the consumers right now. For those of us that have been around a while, we realize a 4.5 or even a 5% interest rate is pretty damn good, man.
Right.
But I do get concerned that it's like, oh my God, 4.5% interest rate. Well, Bruce Norris, I'm hoping to get Bruce and Aaron, but I'm hoping to get Bruce, and Bruce would show a chart that says, hey, when interest rates are rising, demand actually rises and price rises. And that's what you said about 35 minutes ago, generally speaking. You start to see this higher, a few people can't qualify, and that's unfortunate. That's the real crappy part. For everybody who had an opportunity to buy and didn't because prices were too high or we're in a bubble, I've been saying for 2 years, I don't care what the prices are.
Right.
If you can buy a house at 3%, buy a house.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying that today.
And this whole bubble issue, I mean, I'm not sure how many consumers you guys are dealing with. It does not exist right now, folks. This is not 2007.
Yep.
And if they're looking at that as a model, it doesn't exist. I mean, we are dealing with, even if there's a rash of foreclosures, people stop making payments, they're sitting on 6 figures in equity, right? I mean, with interest, with equity going up 20% in a year, 20, 30, 40% in 2 or 3 years, if you own a house and you didn't do anything stupid by taking a bunch of money out of it, and you're behind in payments, sell your house.
Well, but even
it's not going to foreclosure.
But and I don't have the number. Darn it! I wish I had it. Make me look really smart right now. But even the people that have basically applied for the forbearance during the COVID window, the number. If you follow, and you can get this information on Mortgage Bankers Association, they publish it every single week. And I don't remember what the percentage is, but I think it was like, which I thought was high. It was like 4.5% of mortgages at the peak of COVID were requesting some sort of forbearance. Well, that number has been getting lower and lower and lower, meaning they've actually come out of forbearance and said, okay, enough of this nonsense. And I don't know what it is now, but it's almost insignificant.
Right.
So are we going to see a rash of foreclosures? Why would we see any foreclosures?
They'll sell their homes.
Exactly.
And walk away with $100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even with the evictions, I've been doing eviction moratorium updates. And the last couple of months, I'm like, I need to actually stop using the word eviction, because it presupposes that all these landlords and all of these property management companies are just eager to go evict people. Pre-COVID, we truly evicted less than 1% of the properties that we managed. We had a few others that we had challenges. Well, let's work with you. We don't want to evict you. You don't want that process. And this flood of evictions that have been foretold, well, they're not there,
right?
And they're not coming.
Because even if those people are in those units and they're renting them, they realize there's no place for them to go.
Correct.
And even if they did find something, they'd pay more.
And they have a job.
Exactly.
And they have a job. And they might even have a little bit of money in the bank. I don't know where that came from. It came from somewhere. Maybe some stimulus package or something. So anyway, Mark, as always, so appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Great being here.
Our 2022 real estate market forecast continues. Stand by. We're leading up to Chris Thornburg on April 6th. So we're getting close to that. So we'll get you guys some details on how you can see Chris and where that's going to be and how we're going to deliver it. But again, Mr. Dowling,
thank you.
Thank you, my friend. All right. Well, we'll see you next year, right?
Sooner.
Or sooner.
You'll see me sooner.
All right. Stay tuned.